1. Since the moment I started working at this restaurant 6 months ago, the alleyway behind the restaurant has always given me an uncomfortable feeling. To gain the layout of this restaurant, it's located in the middle of downtown, 5 minutes from the Mexican-US border, since we're located in the tip of Texas in the Rio Grande Valley. The alley itself is not located right behind the establishment. You must walk past its patio, then past our garage, until you reach the side back door. Then you have to prop open the door, as it locks behind you once it's closed. During the day, I usually see people walking back and forth across the alley when I go to take out the trash. It's typically a safe location, though it is also prominent for its homeless population. They're usually harmless despite a few that are noticeably mentally ill. My colleagues have even gotten to know a few and have given leftovers whenever possible. I work as part of the kitchen staff at this restaurant, and most of the time will work past 10 p.m. At night, my boss usually never lets the women take out the trash just to be safe, especially a petite 5-foot Hispanic 28-year-old female. Anyway, since the quarantine started, our kitchen staff has become quite small, so I'll usually help take out the trash with one of the other men working. This night was pretty slow, and my fellow co-workers and I were encouraged to clean up and leave early. At around 9:45, I decided to get 2 of these slightly full trash bags and take them out back myself, assuming someone will see my actions and take the other 2 after me. As I walked past the patio to the garage, my gut began to fluster. I got to the back door and paused. Maybe you should wait, I told myself. But the smell protruding from the bags was nauseating. I pushed the door and propped it open with a brick we usually kept nearby. The alley was dark and silent. The air felt menacing. The only light illuminating was from the bulb above the door. I walked quickly to the bins and lifted up the top and dumped the trash. Then slowly a man stood up from the other side of the dumpster. He wasn't very big, but he looked a lot older. He was sweating, but his demeanor seemed agitated. He must have been crouching and waiting for some time. I jumped back, holding my hand above my heart, that seemed to be pulsing through my chest. The man looked at me, eyeing me as my steps moved backward. He shook his head, motioning me to stop. He was far too close for me to outrun him. I looked at his bushy, dark brows and dark black eyes. Most of him was still cloaked in the night that surrounded us. His clothes didn't look homeless, but I assumed he was, since it's common for them to be out here at this hour, usually waiting for food. I told him I had no leftovers, but he shook his head again and took out a medium-sized knife. My eyes widened as I took in a breath. The following exchange took place in Spanish, but I'll translate. I don't have my purse. I'm still working. Just come with me, he said, using his knife as a pointer. My mouth grimaced. Having no idea where this small amount of courage came from, I said, My friend is coming right now with the rest of the trash. No, come now, he said more hurriedly and stepped closer, and I stepped back again, speaking again with a little more tenacity. They all saw me come over here. There's more trash, and he's coming out right now. He's outside right now. I just need to yell. You're not going to scream. I'll cut you. To this day, I don't know what came over me, but I replied with, Mirror me, which means watch me. We looked at each other, daring each other. Then we both heard footsteps coming from inside the garage, and he ran past me. I stood there breathing again. I didn't even know I was holding my breath. I turned to see my friend John come out of the door. We're almost done over... He stopped after seeing my face. What happened? I explained everything as tears ran down my face. My friend decided to run down the alley to try and catch him, even though I told him not to and that he's gone by now. It was about 5 minutes until he came back. John relayed to me that no one was around except for some homeless guys we were familiar with. He asked them if they saw anyone running from the alleyway, and they said yeah, but they didn't recognize the man. And he took off in the opposite direction toward the border. John took me back inside and told our boss what happened. They called the cops, whose station was pretty close by. They sent someone to patrol the area and gather a description from me, which I gave. My boss let me leave early, and John walked me to my car. He told me it's too bad we don't keep a camera back there. It would have been cool to see how I handled the guy. I smiled slightly, but my stomach was still in knots. He looked at me and apologized. I moved my hand to stop him and told him I'll be fine. Unfortunately, I still work there. But I've been excused from trash duty from now on. Obviously, they never found him. I don't want to think about what would have happened to me if I was more complicit. Something gave me the courage to argue back to him, and thank goodness that my friend came out just in time. So, man waiting behind the dumpster, I hope we never meet again. 2. Short background story. I, 24 and female, have been dating my boyfriend since I was 15. The first 6 years of our relationship had been kinda long distance. I used to go visit him on weekends, and it would take me around 2 hours by bus and train to reach the station where he would come pick me up. This story takes place when I was 18, so I was quite used to public transportation by then, and I was aware of the creeps and weirdos one would encounter when traveling. Nothing really creepy ever happened to me apart from the usual stares and unsolicited, "Hello, beautiful." One Saturday morning, I got on the usual train for the last 15 to 20 minutes of my trip, after traveling an hour and a half by bus. I always tended to sit either close to other girls or to families with children. This one time, the train carriage was quite empty, so I sat across from a young guy with flamingos on his t-shirt and a laptop. I don't really remember who the other people in our carriage were. That seat just looked like the safest one. Shortly after the departure, another guy entered the carriage and sat down next to me. He looked 25 to 30 years old, he was wearing some dirty old clothes, and he smelled like sweat and possibly booze. He said hi, and I said hi. As I wrote before, I was quite used to weirdos talking to me on buses and trains, so I didn't immediately feel like I was in danger. In my experience, it was usually better to engage in a short and meaningless conversation than ignoring them completely. He asked what my name was, and I made one up. Then he asked why I was traveling all alone, and I said my boyfriend was waiting for me at the following station. I hoped this would be enough to make him desist, but I was so wrong. He started telling me he had just gotten a new phone, and he had lost all of his friends' numbers. He asked me to give him my number so he'd have someone to talk to at night. WTF. I politely declined. At that point, I was starting to feel very uncomfortable, but my stop was only 5 to 10 minutes away, and I still thought he was going to give up and leave. He insisted on me giving him my phone number and started getting closer to me. At this point, I stopped answering his questions and looked in the opposite direction. This must have bothered him because he suddenly put his dirty hand on my thigh to get my attention. I was terrified, but I managed to utter a shaky, "Don't touch me." I wish I had yelled, but I didn't, and no one in the carriage noticed what was going on. Not even the flamingo guy, who was literally in front of us. Or maybe he noticed, and didn't care at first. The guy didn't take his hand off me, and I was petrified. I don't remember if he said something else at that point, because I was focused on his hand and my jeans. I gained some more courage and managed to tell him to leave me alone in a slightly louder voice. I guess that some people started looking in our direction in that moment because he suddenly got up and left. I started crying for the relief as soon as he exited the carriage. The flamingo guy asked if I was okay and if I needed him to call someone. I said I was fine. I tried to call my boyfriend, but he didn't answer because he was driving to come pick me up. I thought it was over. The train started slowing down, and I got up in order to get off. Little did I know that the creepy guy was most probably keeping an eye on me from the window of the carriage door after he left. I got off the train and started to look around, hoping to see my boyfriend, who would sometimes wait for me on the platform. At that point, I noticed that the guy had stepped off the train as well. As soon as we made eye contact, he started walking towards me. I felt my heart drop. I turned around and started walking quickly towards the stairs, hoping he would lose me in the crowd. As soon as I reached the underground corridor, I started running. I got to the other side of the tunnel. I ran up the stairs and towards the restrooms. I don't know why I didn't run to the main hall instead. I was panicking, and I just went for the first place that came to my mind. I locked myself into one of the cubicles, made sure it was closed, and then got up in the toilet so he wouldn't see my feet. I was wearing a pair of quite recognizable boots. 20 to 30 seconds later, I heard someone come in and hastily try all the door handles. Of course, it could have been anyone, but I'm convinced it was him. It just made no sense for anyone else to try and open all the doors like that. I remember feeling my heartbeat in my throat while I was waiting for him to leave. I remained still and silent for what felt like ages until I heard him walk away. At that point, I started crying again and finally managed to call my boyfriend and tell him I was locked into one of the toilet stalls. When I got there and I came out of the stall, I was shaking uncontrollably, but he somehow managed to calm me down. When we got out of the restrooms, there was no sign of the guy, and I never saw him again. Looking back now, I know I should have reported him to the authorities, but I stupidly thought that they wouldn't believe me, or that they were going to shrug it off as not a big deal. After all, nothing really bad happened on the train, and I had no proof that it was him trying to open the stall doors. This experience made me avoid trains for a while, even though after some time I managed to overcome my fear. Please, creepy guy on the train, let's not ever meet again. 3. This happened so long ago now, I couldn't have been older than 19? I didn't get my driver's license until then, but I don't think I was much older than 21. So, somewhere in the 2012 to 2014 ballpark, it was Thanksgiving Day. The afternoon of, in fact. I wanted to take a shower, but was out of some of my personal care items, so I go to our local Walmart supercenter to get some. My mom, who had already started the long day's cooking for dinner, needed some ingredients. I got dressed while she made a list. I dressed in a pair of loose black athletic pants, a t-shirt, a red sweatshirt jacket, sunglasses, and a domo hat. For those of you who don't know, domo is the official mascot of Japan's public broadcaster, NHK. The hat was brown, like the character, and had his signature open mouth with sharp teeth and little black eyes. It was a gift from someone I was friends with at the time, and is an important detail to the story. My mom looked at me with raised brows, asking if I was really going out wearing that hat. I liked that hat, thought it was amusing, so I boldly declared that I was indeed wearing the hat to the store, and left, list in hand. The store was surprisingly not busy for a holiday. The parking lot was mostly empty. I could actually see across it there were so few cars. I parked in a road that had maybe 2 other cars in it, with none parked immediately next to me in any direction. On the pharmacy side of the store, so I could get my items first. First aisle I went to was for lotion. There was an older man already standing in the aisle browsing the lotion. He was old enough to be my grandfather, short and scrawny, with thinning white hair. He reminded me a lot of Marty from Christmas with the Cranks. He's the creep of this story. I give him little more than a glance and a polite smile as I stand within arm's length, looking for my preferred brand of lotion. In my peripheral vision, I could see him glance at me, the shelves, and back at me. That was when he spoke up.
What brand do you recommend?
He asked, shifting his handbasket on his arm to gesture to the rather wide selection. Well, I usually get brand G or S. I'm allergic to everything, and they're the only brands that don't irritate my skin. Now, something to know about me. At the time, I had the tendency to over-explain myself and give too much information. As such, I ended up rambling on about my insane allergies to almost everything, even my own cats. He smiled at me and seemed genuinely interested in my idle chatter. I pointed out a couple of other brands that he might like that I had tried once, grabbed what I needed, then turned my cart to leave the aisle. By then, only a few minutes had passed. Another shopper was perusing lotions, and had left her empty cart blocking the end of the aisle. Even the other end was blocked. I was effectively trapped. And not wanting to be rude, I stood there anxiously waiting for her to move along, or at least take a hint and move her cart. All the while, the old man stood there smiling at me.
I like your hat. What is it?
Thanks, it's a character called Domo. It's actually a Japanese icon.
Oh, so tell me about your cats.
Unable to escape, I complied. Again, supplying more information than was warranted. "Oh, I have 4. Snowball, Sherbert, Sophie, and Lily. My brother named Sherbert that because he's orange." By then I had gotten the feeling that I had said too much, and his smiling, unblinking gaze was starting to make me uncomfortable. Finally, the other shopper got what she needed and moved on. I excused myself and practically flew to the grocery side of the store. I have long legs, which gives me a naturally quick walk, but I kid you not when I say I crossed from the front right corner of the store to the back left corner in 3 seconds or less. I felt relieved to be away from that guy. I would never see him again, and I could just forget about it. Wrong. So very wrong. I was catty-corner on the other side of the baking goods aisle, so I can see to either end out of the corner of my eye. I couldn't have been there more than a minute, and I saw the old man round the corner, headed my direction. He looked so fragile I wasn't sure he couldn't move that fast without breaking a hip. Perhaps he teleported. I pretended I didn't notice him, grabbed what was on the list, and zoomed to the opposite end and around the corner. He couldn't have followed me, right? Surely he just needed something from that aisle too. Honestly, who's to say? I never stopped long enough for him to catch up to me so I could ask whether or not he was following me. I'm 99.9% certain he was, though. Every time I glanced over my shoulder, there he was. The creep followed me all over the store for the remainder of my shopping, and to the self-checkout. He got right behind me, close enough that I could physically feel his presence. We went to separate checkout machines. He had very few items for all the wandering around the store he did, which only sold the idea that he was following after me, with whatever intentions he had. As such, the old man finished checking out first, whereas I had a half-full cart. I watched discreetly from the corner of my eye to see that he left, again feeling relieved, only to have my stomach sink when he stood outside the designated self-checkout area, undoubtedly waiting for me. Mother effer. This guy just would not give up. I paid, loaded the bags into the cart as slowly as I possibly could, hoping he would just get tired of waiting and leave. Still he waited. So when he was turned looking towards the exit, I peeled out of the self-checkout right past him and speed-walked back to the pharmacy side where I came in at. I looked over my shoulder damn near constantly as I ran with the cart to the van I shared with my family. The passenger side was facing the storefront, so I went to the driver's side to load the bags in the back seat, so the van would provide me some cover. I even took off my domo hat and threw it in, thinking it would make it more difficult for him to find me if he should look for me in the lot. Guess who I saw approaching the little blue sports car across the empty aisle and in direct sight from me? Yes, him. I could see him looking for me, so I bent forward into the back door, hidden by the driver's seat, and peeked around the headrest. Too late. He spotted me, probably because of the red jacket, because all he would have been able to see of me was my back end sticking out. I cursed my luck, waited for him to get into his car before I hastily tossed the last bags in, and ran the cart to the nearest corral. Only assholes leave their carts in empty parking spaces. All that time he had pulled through the empty spaces immediately in front of him to turn down that aisle. The whole time his eyes were on me. I know because mine were on him behind my sunglasses, which I had never taken off, which nearly caused him to crash into the pickup truck with oversized tires. I just made it back to the van when his car pulled up, blocking mine in. I froze, fearing the worst. Was he going to get out of his car and come after me? He rolled down the window and put his arm out and waved. I smiled curtly and gave a brusque wave in return, glad he couldn't see the fear in my eyes. He pulled away then, leaving me to sit in the van and literally just screamed due to all the anxiety. I screamed a few more times on my way home, checking the rear view mirror every few seconds to make sure his little blue car wouldn't appear, following me home. That was one of the scariest things to ever happen to me. I vowed I would never go to the store on a holiday again, lest I have another similar experience. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 522. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use and sent in stories for use in this video. This video was saved thanks to subscribers. As I've mentioned before, I won't keep grumbling on about it, you know the situation. They're very, very thin on the ground. That was a week between actually searching for stories. I think I may have had about a total of 8 potential ones, and out of those 8 potential, I might have been able to send 4 messages. Which statistically means I'm probably not going to get enough responses back. And sure enough, out of the 4 messages I sent, I was able to secure 2. But that just gives us an excuse to try other things, doesn't it? There's a few series I've been looking into adding here and there. So in the days I'm not able to do 2, I should be able to do 1 a week at least. And when I can do 2, I will. But on the days I'm not able to do 2, I'll try and get something interesting up. We will certainly have a video out then anyway, and more likely going to be a funny one than anything else, because they perform much, much better. Unless I can think of an interesting, scary stories type subject to do, where I can get a good number of stories to go with, because I'm open to that as well. Alright, I think I'm going to wrap things up there for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.